Corinthians chapter 4, verse 1 and 2, saying that financial forgiveness. Hey there, welcome to the Radical Godly Stewardship podcast, where kingdom economics meets real world financial strategy. I am your host, Dr. Lexi Johnson, financial coach and strategist, author of Stop Begging God for Money, and steward of a kingdom assignment to teach people how to produce, multiply, and dominate with wisdom. I'm so grateful to the Lord that He has entrusted me with this assignment. Around here, we don't chase hype, we track systems, right? We track systems. We don't react to headlines, we interpret them. And we don't separate faith from finance because in the kingdom, stewardship is discipleship. So let's get into today's episode. Um, June 2026, family, is shaping up to be one of those pay attention seasons. All right. Now, not because of panic, but because of pressure points that are forming across the global economy at the same time. And most people are only seeing fragments of that. They are maybe seeing a headline about inflation, or you're seeing a headline about interest rates, or you're seeing a headline about conflict. Perhaps you're seeing a headline about AI growth. But very few people are connecting the system that is underneath these headlines, right? The system that is underneath all of these things that we think are happening kind of in a silo, right? So today, I want to walk you through what's actually happening right now, okay? And before I share with you what we're covering today, I just want to say that, hey, if you're watching live or you're watching the replay, thank you for checking the podcast out. Please feel free to engage in the comments, ask your questions. Again, that's whether you're here live or you're watching the replay. I will come back and look at comments. I may or may not respond to all of them. If there are questions, I'm definitely going to respond to questions. So let's dig in. Let's talk about what's actually happening right now. So, inflation pressure is not fully gone, right? We have seen some relief here or there, but the truth of the matter is that it has just shifted categories, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about food and supply chain stability and how it continues to tighten in specific regions. We're going to talk about credit dependency, which continues to rise quietly in households. And this is one that I am, if you're in any of my courses, if I'm doing any kind of one on one strategizing with you, if I'm teaching about finances somewhere, this is a topic that I am really hammering home the fact that we have to get ourselves where we are not dependent on credit, right? We're going to talk about that. AI expansion is increasing and that energy demand, right? Um, it's increasing that globally. And governments are still balancing debt and interest rate pressure. Consumer stress is showing up in invisible ways. Okay. That's debt, savings depletion, delayed purchases. And after we talk about things, then I'm going to bring it all home. Okay. And we're going to talk about what kingdom citizens are supposed to do with this information. All right. But first, for those of you who watch us regularly, we know that we do our stewardship check in. So, for those who are new, I typically give you 3 questions here before we dive into our content. 3 questions that will help you to think about where you are in terms of stewardship, right? And the questions are usually in line with whatever we're talking about for the day. So, question number 1 is, am I financially responding to life or proactively building structure. Okay. Am I responding or am I being proactive? Because reacting is very expensive. So ask yourself that question. Okay. Question number two, ask yourself, if income stopped increasing, would my financial system still function? If income stopped increasing, would my financial system still function? Right? Not survive emotionally. We're talking about functioning structurally. Okay. If you got no more increase, okay, would your financial system still function? And then, third, ask yourself, am I aware of economic pressure points before they hit me personally? Right? We want to be aware of them long before they come to us, because by the time you feel it, you're already behind. Okay. And this is why it's important for us as kingdom citizens to stop um, minimizing the importance of money, the importance of wealth. Now, I'm not talking about, getting rich and making millions, but if you happen to do that, that's great. That's wonderful. Look at how many things now that you can do for your family, for the kingdom. But this isn't about that. Okay. And we'll talk more about that later as well. But we want to be able to make sure that we are seeing things ahead of time. Okay. Because by the time we actually feel the thing, we are already behind. Okay. Proverbs 10:14 is our anchor verse for today. And it says, the wise store up knowledge. The wise store up knowledge. Of course, I'm paraphrasing. Write that scripture down. You can go back and study it in your own time. All right. So let's get into the content. The first thing that I want to talk about today is um, the real headlines that are driving the economy, like right now. Okay. Now, let's slow this down and simplify it. There are five major forces that are shaping the economy right now. Oh, and I must let you all know my window is open. Okay. It's a nice day outside. The kids are out playing. And so, if you hear some screaming, hollering, playing, laughing, all of that, it is what it is. Okay. Hopefully it's not picking up a whole lot. Anywho, let's look at our first major force here that's shaping the economy right now. The first one is inflation is no longer general, it is selective. Okay. We are no longer in everything is rising equally inflation. Okay. We are in category pressure inflation. What does that mean? It means food remains pretty sticky. Okay. It's a category where inflation is, still a thing. Food remains sticky. Insurance continues rising. Okay. It's insurance of any kind. And I know where I live currently, the auto insurance rates are like absolutely and utterly ridiculous. They are, right? Services are expensive, right? Just to to go back to the auto insurance thing, and just to give you an idea of like how ridiculous it is here. Um, in 6 months' time, you could probably spend anywhere from a couple grand to 4 grand to 8 grand on auto insurance. Yeah. Okay. So it's ridiculous. Services are expensive. Healthcare costs are climbing. Transportation is volatile, right? So even when headline inflation looks calmer, okay, because we keep hearing how things are calming down or they've gotten better or whatever the case may be, households are still feeling pressure in these essential categories, okay? So that's food, insurance, services, healthcare, and transportation. All right. Now, this is where many people get confused because they hear that inflation is cooling, but their grocery bill says, no, not really, right? And both can be technically true. However, as a kingdom citizen, your stewardship must follow what your reality is and not the headlines. Okay. Because it is true in some aspects that inflation is cooling, but in other aspects, it's not. And in some of these aspects where it's not cooling, it is still affecting you. Right. So you have to follow your reality, not what the headline is saying. Okay. Not what the news is reporting. Follow your reality. Number two, food system stress continues, okay? Because there's global supply pressure. So, without sensationalism, the food system remains sensitive, right? Due to climate disruptions, global shipping volatility, fertilizer and fuel costs, labor constraints in agriculture systems, okay, and regional instability that is affecting imports. So, this doesn't mean that there are shortages everywhere, but it certainly means that fragility exists in the system. And when you have a fragile system, that means you're going to have price volatility, you're going to have inconsistent supply, and you're going to have, excuse me, you're going to have localized spikes. Okay. So it is imperative that we understand this. It's imperative that we understand this. And for many, many years now, and for various different reasons, you have people out there who are talking about, learning how to grow your own food. And I continue to tell my people the same thing. Please learn how to grow your own food. Please stock up on your non perishables. In fact, I teach my clients and course participants that not only do you set aside an amount for your grocery budget, but within your grocery budget, there should be a percentage that anytime you're going grocery shopping, your major grocery shopping, that you have a certain percentage that is dedicated to stocking up on your non-perishables, your canned goods, your water, right? And things of that nature. So this is why stewardship is not just financial, it becomes preparation, it becomes wisdom, it becomes resilience thinking. If we think about Joseph, right? Joseph didn't wait for famine to think about food systems. No, he was already thinking about food systems. He was already putting things into place so that when the famine came, they would be just fine. Everybody would get through just fine. And we just need more of that today. I know there's a friend of mine who has done a couple of posts this week about um, how the church needs to get back to the Church of Acts days, right? And the Church of Acts mindset and behavior. And that's so very true. Like we need to come together and we need to be like, okay, you know, who has land, right? Where we can, grow food. Families can come get plots, plots of the land, is that how you say that? And grow food, right? And or maybe this family is responsible for growing these types of food and this family is responsible for these types of food. And not only with food, but in everything, right? We need to build communities where you have a person who understands how to help people heal through food and other natural resources. We need the growers. We need kingdom financiers, and we're going to talk more about that in towards the end. But again, this is what Joseph was about. He was about putting that system in place before they could feel it, right? And so, we're already at a point where we're feeling things, but it's never too late to establish biblical systems, right? To counteract the things that we are experiencing in this economy. The third major force that is affecting what's going on with us financially is consumer debt, right? Consumer debt pressure is still building and is building very quietly. Okay. There are no dramatic headlines, right? Household debt remains elevated. And the truth of the matter is, it's going to get worse if people don't figure out how to divorce themselves from credit. Okay, how um, to not be dependent on credit. Okay, the real issue is not just the size of your debt. It is the dependency on credit for survival spending. And what do I mean by survival spending? I mean using your credit cards for groceries, for utilities, for rent gaps, for emergencies, for transportation. When you're using your credit cards for that type of thing, that is a dependency and that is an issue, right? That needs to be addressed right away. This is not, it used to be that credit cards were like for luxury debt, okay? Not your everyday things, right? So now this is pressure financing. You are financing your groceries, your transportation, your housing, your emergencies, your utilities, right? You are financing it because you put it on the card, right? And you pay a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit here, a little bit there. And you are in bondage for a long time. And the truth of the matter is that it doesn't even really solve the problem, the fact that you cannot afford your things for basic survival anyhow. So you're creating a bigger hole. You still can't afford what's basic survival. You're dependent on the credit cards, and then you're digging this deeper hole of now having to pay back, starting to pay back the credit cards because they don't give you any grace period, right? Oh, go ahead, charge up what you want. You don't have to start paying us for 6 months or for a year or whatever. They're not doing that out there, right? So now you have the pressure of paying that stuff back on a monthly basis, right? Even if you're not paying it 100% off, maybe you're paying it down to 30% or whatever the case may be, you still got to send something. And that is pressure financing. Proverbs chapter 22, verse 7 says, the borrower is servant to the lender. And that is the truth. And I can stand here and say that based on personal experience, right? Debt doesn't just affect money, it affects your decisions, it affects the opportunities that you can access, it affects stress levels, it affects your health, it affects so many different things, right? People are losing sleep at night. And I'm not this is not me being dramatic. This is me telling you what people come to me, right? When they come to me, when they seek me out to help them, these are the things they're telling me. They can't sleep, they can't eat, they can't think right. They can't they're full of worry, full of stress, full of fear, right? So we have to get to a place where we are not dependent on credit. Another major force is AI. We've talked about AI for some time, but this AI expansion is increasing energy and infrastructure demand. And the growth is not slowing. Okay, it's not slowing. But here's what people miss: AI is not just a tech story. AI is an energy story. It requires data centers, electricity, cooling systems, infrastructure. And we've talked about all of this before. But so, what does this mean? This means that energy demand rises quietly in the background of AI growth. And of course, if the demand for energy is rising, guess what? Right? Yeah, the supply, the price is going up, right? Because they know people will pay the price because it's in demand, right? When systems expand, they consume resources, and resource demand creates investment movement, industry winners, economic reshaping, right? And so that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just something we need to be aware of. And it's a space that, possibly you can invest in, right? Energy, so that you can get some of those returns, right? That you're not just consuming, right? But you are producing as well. All right. The fifth major force that I want to talk about is governments are still balancing debt and interest rate pressure. So even without focusing on a specific policy headline, here is the macro reality. The macro reality is that high national debt pressure still remains. Interest rate decisions still matter for borrowing costs. Refinancing cycles impact banks and consumers, and liquidity conditions affect markets. And when you have all this creates a long-term tension, growth versus stability, stimulus versus inflation control, right? So these are some of the forces right now that is driving all of what we see in the economy. Now, what does this all mean to you personally? Okay, because you might be watching and you're like, okay, yeah, you're talking about all this stuff, and I hear this stuff on the news. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. I don't have no idea what that all means for me. I don't even think it means anything to me, right? Let's bring this down now from a global perspective to a personal one. All five of these forces create one environment, and that environment is a high pressure financial system. Okay. That means mistakes cost more. If you're making mistakes in your finances, it's costing you more. Debt is heavier. Savings matters much more. Okay. It's important that you're solvent. So being solvent means having savings. It means having margins. Margin simply means like cushion, right? To move. And if something happens, there's cushion, okay, to break the fall. So margins matter more. Preparation matters a lot more. So this is where I need you to hear me clearly. Yah is not just interested in your spiritual life. Okay. And I think that that's oftentimes where we go off the rails in um, religion, right? Because we think that Yah is just interested in our spiritual life. He is interested in your stewardship life because stewardship determines what you can handle, it determines what you can sustain, it determines what you can build and what you can fund. Okay. That's what stewardship determines. And that is huge. Okay. So I want to pause right here and say something very, very intentionally. I need you to understand my heart and how I teach finances. This is not about getting rich. This is not about chasing money. This is not about materialism. This is not even about hype based prosperity teaching. Not at all. If you listen to me for even a short period of time, you will know that it is not that at all. If wealth comes as a result of obedience and wisdom, then wonderful, great, right? Because the word does say, if you're faithful with little, right, that he would give you more, okay? Because you have shown yourself, proven yourself to be able to steward the little bit that he's given you. But wealth, being wealthy, rich, and all of that, that is not the goal. Okay. Too many of us think that that's the goal. We want to be rich and that's the goal. That's not the goal. The goal in the kingdom, first of all, we understand that finances are not separate from formation, they are a part of it because stewardship teaches you discipline, it teaches you responsibility, it teaches you foresight, it teaches you restraint, and it teaches you wisdom under pressure. And I want to share with you why this matters right now. It matters right now because we're entering a time where food systems are less predictable. Inflation is persistent in essentials. Healthcare costs continue to rise. Global instability affects supply chains. And financial pressure is exposing and will continue to expose weak systems. Okay. And I'm not talking about just out there. I'm talking about in your household. It's going to expose your weak financial systems, right? Now, this means that you're going to have emergency readiness, resource management, community support systems, and long term thinking. All of this ties back to what I said earlier about the Church of Acts. I was having a conversation with a really good friend of mine earlier this week, and I said, we're going to be forced into a Church of Acts situation. That's unfortunate because as the kingdom, we should already be there. That's what we should be doing. However, we have adopted the way of the world. And so we don't have this community thinking. We have this thinking that it's, everybody for themselves, right? I got to get mine, you go get yours. But the way things are moving in our economy and in the world in general, we are going to be forced to operate like the Church of Acts. Okay. So we can either get ourselves together and go on and do that, right? Or we can wait and then have to be forced to operate that way, right? So this is why kingdom wealth matters. Kingdom wealth is not for luxury. Kingdom wealth is for assignment. Okay. If you're watching this live or you're watching the replay and you have gotten this far, put that in the chat. Kingdom wealth is for assignment. It is not for luxury. I'm not saying you cannot go out and get you a nice home or whatever. Do that stuff. Fine. But we must understand, right, that the wealth that Yah gives us is for assignment. Why? Because kingdom citizens may need resources to grow food, to support communities, to fund solutions, to help families, to build stability in unstable times. And when it comes to the place where we are forced to live, and I'm laughing because we shouldn't be forced to live like the Church of Acts, we are going to need the kingdom financiers more than ever because they are the ones that are going to be able to help us to do that initially, right? And I say they, I'm saying we are the ones, right? So when I talked earlier about, a portion of your grocery budget using a percentage of your grocery budget, 5%, 10% of it, whatever, 3%, whatever you and the Lord determine to get to stock up on non-perishables, canned goods, things and water and all that stuff. I'm not even saying stock up just for your family. Stock up for your family and then stock up for another family because there will inevitably be people who are not listening, who refuse to listen, who think that this is all just hype and smoke and mirrors and again, this is not fear, right? This is not fear based anything. We need to be prepared. Okay. This is discipleship. Okay. Stewarding your finances at the end of the day is about discipleship. Learning to steward well is not optional for a kingdom citizen. It is formation because you cannot be trusted with more if you cannot steward what you already have. Right. And so, if this episode is helping you to think differently, then I am inviting you to go deeper. And there are a few ways in which you can do that. Of course, there is my book, Stop Begging God for Money. You can get that at authorlexijohnson.com. All of these things with their links will be in the description. So you can get my book. It will certainly help you to think differently about money. And not only will it help you to think differently about money, but there are practical action steps in there, chapter to chapter to chapter, all the way through the book, right? You can't afford a course. You can't, get the book. Okay. Financial Rebellion Foundations. I'm excited about that. You know why? Because it is a self-paced course, okay? It is a self-paced, structured discipleship experience for stewardship, for solvency, for strategy, and for kingdom financial thinking. Okay. And so in the description is the link for that as well. And guess what? We are in pre registration right now. In the first 25, okay, I call them the founding 25 students can enroll for only $69. The regular cost is 127. That's still not a lot, but don't pay 127 if you don't have to. Pay the $69. Is it 69 or 65? I think it's, don't quote me. I think it's 69. I'll go with the higher one just in case. If it's 65, wonderful for you, but I do believe it's $69. Um, Click on the link, use the coupon code founding25, right? And get in that course. All right. It's self-paced. So you can, work it around your schedule and all this and that. I put that out. The doors officially open on July 1st, but I created that so that people did not have to wait for my next 90-day experience. Because, once or twice a year, I teach Financial Rebellion, the 90-day experience. That is live, you get me live. These aren't just videos where you get me live and accountability and all that. But that I'm not doing that again until 2027. And so I didn't want people to have to wait. We can't afford to wait, right? So you have Financial Rebellion Foundations. The link is in the description. Okay. So get in there. No excuses. All right. The world will always produce noise, but kingdom citizens are called to produce clarity. The question is not what is happening in the world. The question is, how am I stewarding in the middle of it? All right. So that's it for episode 76. I am Dr. Lexi Johnson. I am calling you to stay alert, to stay disciplined, stay grounded, stay faithful, right? And of course, produce, multiply, dominate. And I'll see you next time. God bless. Bye.